Well, hello once again. Today we are going to shift gears and move away from world religions for a little bit, as well as cultic practices and cultic groups, and turn to the occult. So the reason I want to do this is because the occult is prevalent in our society, not just in terms of media, the sheer number of television shows or movies that focus on occultic practices involving witchcraft, for example, or vampires or werewolves, etc. So it's out there, but behind the movies and even some of the more entertaining ones, kind of the Harry Potter ones or whatever it is, are very real practices that people are involved in. So I'm not here to tell you, don't watch Harry Potter, don't go trick-or-treating, don't do that type of stuff. I'm going to leave that up to the family. I personally enjoy the Harry Potter movies, etc. We personally go trick-or-treating. We feel we're able to do that with a clear conscience before the Lord, but we also understand that some Christians take a different position. I'm not here to debate those things. I'm here to talk about the practices of the occult that people are involved in or interested in getting involved in, that we really do need to pay attention to as Christians, and how to help our family members who are perhaps interested in the occult. So with this study, this brief overview of the occult, I'm also going to be touching on Satanism, what it is in terms of its traditional sense, as well as its more modern manifestation. And then I'm also going to discuss ghosts and demons. So as I said, we are taking a little bit of a turn here in this discussion. So bear with us as we make our way through some pretty heavy material. All right. So the word occult comes from the Latin word occulare, which means to conceal. So it is searching for that which is hidden. And therefore, it's a very broad term, occult, because it involves a number of practices to try to discern or lay hold of hidden knowledge. And this is usually done through mystical practices, witchcraft, potions, spells, even things like Satanism. So I am going through this not to arouse your interest in it or to somehow get you to the point where you think, well, I've got to see this for myself and I've got to go ahead and try these things. Do not practice the occult. And you think that I, excuse me, would not have to remind us as Christians not to practice the occult, but as we'll go ahead and see, there are some Christians who do this perhaps unwittingly, and then some who don't understand that as Christians we're not supposed to be involved in the occult. Somehow that has slipped by them, and they've tried to reconcile occultic practices with their faith. So I'm not trying to get anybody interested in the occult. I'm just trying to warn us and to help us to resist Satan, because we're told that when we do resist him, he will flee from us. And also hopefully to equip you to go in and help others. All right. So continuing with an introduction to the occult, Dr. Ronald Enroth in the Evangelical Dictionary of Theology has this to say, quote, "Those phenomena that are collectively known as the occult may be said to have the following distinct characteristics. Number one, the disclosure and communication of information unavailable to humans through normal means, beyond the five senses. 2, the placing of persons in contact with supernatural powers, paranormal energies, or demonic forces. 3, the acquisition and mastery of power in order to manipulate or influence other people into certain actions. And so that starts to narrow the definition of the occult. This is, again, beyond our five senses, trying to gain that which is hidden from us. It is doing so through the contact with paranormal energies or the supernatural. And then, as he says, the acquisition and mastery of power in order to manipulate or influence other people into certain actions. Then it's using that power that you've gotten and laid hold of beyond your five senses to now manipulate others. So first up, let's look at witchcraft and neo-paganism, as it's called. So you have black magic and you have white magic. These are broad brushstrokes. Black magic is something that I will get into. It's often affiliated with traditional Satanism. It is contacting demons. It is contacting these other forces to cast spells on others and to do them harm. So-called white magic is also called Wicca. And you would know it more as Wicca than white magic today. And so Wicca, when you think of it as a revival of ancient Druidism, neo-paganism. We can joke and say they're tree huggers. True, but it really is the worship of nature, and a specific worship of nature, specific form of the worship of nature. So Wicca, there is no one founder of it. It has its roots in 19th century Britain, partly inspired by a woman named Margaret Murray in the mid 1800s to the mid 1900s. But you really start to hear of it through the writings of a man named Gerald Gardner. Gerald Gardner lived 1884 to 1964, and he started to publish his writings and to promote his teachings in the late 1930s. Some Wiccans believe that Wicca or Druidism is the oldest religion. I will say that it is indeed old, but the oldest is the worship of Yahweh, because Adam and Eve worshiped Yahweh in the Garden of Eden. But it doesn't take long for the worship of nature and for the fall to reroute our innate desire for God, to reroute that to other things. It doesn't take long for that to play out on the historical stage. And so it is old, but it's not the oldest religion. It is a subset of neo-paganism. To define neo-paganism, that is a revival of ancient polytheism and a reverence for the forces of nature. And so believing in the goddess, however one defines her, and I'll get into that, worshiping the stars as if they are deities, worshiping the moon as if it is a deity. All of this has actually found its way back into really mainstream religion, if you will, at least in the West, and specifically in America and in Canada. And you have the forces of nature and the deification of the planets and those forces of nature, and that equals neo-paganism. And under that broader umbrella of neo-paganism comes Wicca. Nature is the focus. Nature is the focus. Now, Wicca sometimes focuses on this idea of the goddess, as I just mentioned, And the goddess is sometimes equated with nature and sometimes separated from nature. Wicca will have slightly different rituals than you have perhaps read about in ancient paganism. And we'll be getting into those practices as well. All right. So there are no specific holy books per se, though if there is a book that is referenced more often than not within Wicca, it is called the Book of Shadows. And it's first compiled by Mr. Gardner in the late 30s, early 40s, later expanded by him and then other readers. And it just talks about the practices of modern day Druidism and Wicca neo-paganism. Other popular works, you may find The Spiral Dance by a witch named Starhawk, and that was published in 1979. The Witch's Bible, or A Witch's Bible, I should say, by Janet and Stuart Farrar, 1996. Wiccans, in terms of their belief, they can be pantheists. That is the belief that all pan is God, theism. And so everything is God. The tree is God. I am God. You are God. Forces, laws are God. An ant, a bug is God, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So all things are God or have the God force within them or the goddess force within them. So they can be pantheists. They can be polytheists, meaning poly, many, that there are many gods, technically a little different than pantheism. So pantheism is everything is God. Polytheism teaches that there are many gods, but not everything is God. So they can be either one. But they will call the supreme being goddess. Sometimes goddess is linked with God. They will use the term God, but more often than not, it's goddess. You will often see the goddess and what's called the horned god, lowercase g God, whereas goddess is capital G. So the goddess and the horned god, often called the Lord and the Lady, or the Lady and the Lord. The goddess can be a symbol. It can be an impersonal force in everything. It can be a personal being. And so it's difficult to nail down what Wicca is, because it really can be different for each person practicing it. And when someone says that they believe in the goddess or they attribute something to goddess, well, I think the first question is, how do you define goddess, before we can start to have a healthy discussion on whether or not that goddess is real, which of course, as Christians, we know it's not, but we want to respect people's beliefs. And so we want to step in and say, all right, what is your view of the goddess? So I can then at least discuss on common ground and common understanding. So again, the goddess can be a symbol. It can be an impersonal force, which is in everything. It can be an actual personal being, many personal beings, polytheism, right? As for Jesus, he is either just flat out rejected altogether. He has no place within Wicca. Amen, because he doesn't fit in it. Or he's sometimes considered, as he is in other religions, a spiritual teacher. He taught love. He taught compassion. He's that guy, right? He's that guy that everybody always tries to cast him as, just kind of a loving, almost hippie type, right? And so that's him, and that's where he often gets placed. Wiccans do not have a concept of sin. Humans are not sinful. We don't need to therefore be saved. So there is no real concept of salvation from sin within Wicca. We can do bad things. There is perhaps good and evil. And we'd want to have discussions with Wiccans regarding how does one define good and evil, and where does good and evil come from. But the idea that there is sin and I am a sinner is out the door. Rather, the key goal for Wiccans is to honor and work for the preservation of nature. And if there is one definition of goddess that seems to rise above all the other definitions, it is nature. Nature often is equated with the concept of goddess. And so you want to preserve nature. And you see this through a lot of the environmental movements that are perhaps affiliated with Druidism or affiliated with neo-paganism, et cetera. It doesn't mean that every environmental movement out there is a bad thing or somehow linked to witchcraft, but you will see Wiccans often be activists and very causal in their approach to the environment because the environment is the goddess. When you die, a Wiccan believes that your body simply replenishes the earth, which is the goddess's wish. So you go back to the goddess, if you will, by simply replenishing her. In terms of what happens to you other than your body, your spirit, your soul, there's really no belief about life after death. So you just go back to the earth. Some may try to weave in ideas of reincarnation, but technically that is not under the umbrella of neo-paganism or Wicca. Most will believe that you just kind of get brought back into the earth. Some will say reincarnation. Others will talk about going to a land called Summerland. And it's this utopian society. It's their version of heaven. They won't equate it with heaven, but if there is a place in the afterlife that Wiccans believe you go to, and again, not every Wiccan believes this, you will hear it be called Summerland, where I guess it's always summer. So some believe that you just get, your body just goes into the ground and that's it. You get, absorbed back into the goddess. Others believe in reincarnation, and still others believe that you go to Summerland. In terms of their practices, Wiccans practice divination and spell casting. Most of them will perform their rituals in a circle. I, in college, knew of a practitioner of Wicca, and she was in theater with me, and I was a theater major, and so you run into all sorts of different people in the realm of theater. And this show we were in together, she was pretty clear about what it was that she believed, and she was open to me describing what I believed. And at one point, she had asked another castmate of mine who also was a Christian if she, the Christian, would join her, the witch, at, I think it was midnight, on like an upcoming Saturday, to form a circle to dance around with not a lot on, and to just join in some merriment in the name of Wicca or in the name of the goddess. And so this is often done in a circle to talk about the eternal connection that we all have. A circle never ends, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's just this one big circle of us being together and us going into the goddess. And if you believe in reincarnation, you come back out of the goddess, you live again, you go into the goddess, and you just go around and around. So things are done in a circle. Also to talk about how everything is confined around us. There's power in a circle. It's theoretically hard to break into a circle. And so that's why we gather together, because we are only as strong as our weakest link, et cetera, right? Wiccans, the gathering of them, as you may or may not know, and this is true with black magic as well, is called a coven. And this is a local assembly. Many Wiccans, however, are solitary. They will connect online. They'll have different Wiccan websites or chat rooms that they can go and be a part of. They will have Facebook groups that they can be a part of, et cetera, et cetera. So they're going to use social media like Christians do and like a number of people do. But that is where you will find a number of Wiccans. They are solitary, but perhaps finding companionship or maybe seeking advice online. Others will gather locally and form a local coven. And we have them here in the Middleborough area. Yay. They meet for ritual and seasonal holidays, including the 8 major holidays, such as, and here's a sampling, and you'll find that things revolve around the cycle of nature, the vernal equinox, the summer solstice, Beltane, etc. So it's really the revolving of the of nature and the cycles of nature and the cycles of the moon, and that is really seen as the movement of the goddess. And so your holidays will revolve around her movement, if you will, nature's movement. And so, to kind of wrap up this quick overview of Wicca, Wicca is a nature religion, an occultic nature religion. It's trying to reach in and find out about the hidden knowledge of where we came from, where we're going, etc., through means beyond our 5 senses. It's not based on rational fact. It is something that they say you can experience because of obviously either the joy that's in you or the euphoria that you feel, or perhaps some of the negative energy that you may receive if a spell is cast against you. But it's not based on especially the mind, the rational thought. There's no way to sit down and analyze it. You just say, I'm feeling this. I believe it works. I believe that nature, because I'm seeing the forces of nature, or we would understand as the laws of nature that God has created, because I'm seeing nature move, therefore nature must be a God. And we want to worship nature. And there seems to be this age-old idea that there's a force out there binding all creatures together. And that gets wrapped up into, since we can't explain that force, which I don't personally think exists. I think it's based on folklore, right? That there's this binding force that links everything together. But you know as well as I do that seems to be this belief that has permeated throughout history, that nature is powerful in and of itself. And that is therefore identified as that which is above us. We want to tap into that. We do it beyond our 5 senses. And therefore that is called, or that properly categorizes Wicca as an occultic religion, but it's a nature religion, not Satanism. I do want to be fair to Wiccans. You will see symbols, even a star in a circle, that makes you think of Satanism, but it's not an upside down star, and it technically is not Satanism. So be on the lookout for any kind of do-it-yourself spell kits, candles in occultic, so just occultic stores, but candles that are in occultic stores, or candles with occultic symbols on them. These are signs of the occult, and these are things that are marketed really to culture writ large, but to people who are practitioners of Wicca, certain lotions and jewelry. But then you have some people who just like the lotions and like the jewelry that is often worn by those who practice Wicca. And it doesn't mean that people wearing that jewelry are therefore participating in witchcraft. But I would just say, as a Christian, we shouldn't be wearing stars and circles that are affiliated with witchcraft, or really anything else that is affiliated with witchcraft. So just do your research on what you're buying, if there's any question about what you're buying, just so that we don't send mixed messages. I follow Jesus, but I also follow, the forces of nature or something. So that's white magic. Then you get into the different types of black magic, which moves us from the regular star in a circle to the upside down star in a circle. And I want to do an overview of what's called the Church of Satan. So, Church of Satan is not to be confused with traditional Satanism. Traditional Satanism is the actual worship of the devil. It is offering up human sacrifices to the devil. It is bowing to him as Lord. That's not what I'm covering right now, though it's confusing because this group calls itself the Church of Satan. And you think, whoa, so what are you talking about? Well, here's what they're talking about. Anton LaVey is a name you probably know, 1930 to 1997. He was the founder of the first Church of Satan. He has a book, there's plenty of books written about him, but one of them is The Secret Life of a Satanist. And LaVey is most known for, and this is what has gotten him in trouble, just in society, because he had the audacity to publish this. It is the Satanic Bible. Satanic Bible was published in 1969. 1969 is often seen as the year of the devil. And there's no proof that somehow Satan came and took over the world in 1969. Again, that's coming out of more folklore. But if you ever hear people say 1969 is affiliated with Satan, that's because it is affiliated with the publication of the Satanic Bible and a resurgence in the interest in quote unquote Satan right around that time. You also have another book by him called The Satanic Witch, 1971. Here are the beliefs. Satanism in its modern form, so not the worship of the devil, but the other meaning of Satanism, thoroughly and forcefully rejects the biblical Christian doctrine and ethics of love, of the existence of God, holiness, purity. It is man-centered in the extreme. This is really hedonism, finding pleasure in whatever you want to find pleasure in and indulging. Go for it. That pretty much sums up the Church of Satan. It is straight hedonism, hedonism, straight hedonism. Very much man-centered, human-centered, as opposed to God-centered. It rejects all of the Christian doctrines. The idea of God is there, but God is an impersonal balancing force of nature. So in that sense, it is very similar to Wicca in that God, or they won't say goddess per se, some may say that, but it's going to be more God. God is equated with, again, that force that people think exists in nature, and it's the balancing force, bringing in perhaps a little Eastern philosophy of yin and yang, but it's that unspoken force of nature. That's God. And it's an impersonal balancing force as opposed to a personal being. Anton LaVey writes that those who believe in a literal God invented him as an externalized form of their own ego. And so here he is trying to take on the role of a psychologist or a psychiatrist. And it's what people will often try to say about God is that he's a manifestation of ourselves. And we've externalized ourselves and we've called that thing God. That is a propensity. I should say it's a temptation for us to do that, to externalize God, and to create God in our own image. But that, though that is a common manifestation of our sin, it's idolatry, that does not therefore mean that there is no God, right? But LaVey says, yeah, there is no God. All the gods, quote unquote, that exist are really just manifestations of your internal ego, and therefore get rid of that. And if you're going to use the term God, just refer to the balancing force of nature. Jesus, he is either regarded as mythical or a complete failure. Here is where the Church of Satan absolutely goes off the rails, just in terms of historicity. The old liberal argument, liberal Christian argument, going back to our first presentation, was that Jesus didn't exist. Or if he did, he existed in the sense that Paul Bunyan or Johnny Appleseed, kind of Fitchburg, I believe, Fitchburg, Mass. Johnny Appleseed existed. There's a figure, but then this tall tale legend grew up around him. Well, Jesus may have existed, but there's a tall tale legend that grew up around him that then made its way into what we call the Bible. That's the old liberal argument, or that he just didn't exist. But even liberal Christians will not, and just liberal non-Christians will not use that argument anymore, because there's too much historical evidence proving the existence of Jesus Christ. People, still debating, was he the Son of God, etc. But it kind of makes you look foolish academically to try to argue that Jesus didn't exist. But the Church of Satan is crystal clear. He did not exist. He's mythical. But if he did exist, he's a complete abject failure, which is interesting because, well, Christianity is going to obviously make its claims that he's not an abject failure. But as we've been seeing with all the other religions, because they don't quite know what to do with Jesus, they won't deny that he existed by and large, and they won't deny that he did good things. And so they put him into their religion as an example, a guru, a good teacher. There aren't many people that are going to say he was an abject failure. They're at least going to say he was good. The Church of Satan says, no, he wasn't. He was an utter failure and a disgrace. Now, some Satanists, in terms of traditional Satanism, believe that Satan is real and that he's a personal being, as the Bible declares him to be. But those who follow the Church of Satan usually do not believe in the existence of a real being known as Lucifer or the devil or Satan. Instead, Satan symbolizes man as his own God. So Satan symbolizes you and me. He's a symbol for us. And Satan is a symbol for opposition to all organized religions, though the Church of Satan is an organized religion. But, does that mean that Satan stands against the Church of Satan? By their own logic, sure. But they're going to say that he stands against all the other religions. And we, right? Here's a common theme of cults and the occult and really other religions. We have finally figured out who God is. And Satan symbolizes you because you are God. You in your humanity, however, in your flesh and bone, you're an animal. That's all you are. You're just a different type of animal. And you need to be free from moral codes. So you're a God in that, not that you're a deity, but you're accountable only to you. You're a God in that sense. Nothing else should be placed upon you. Just do what you want to do. You should be free from moral codes. If it is something you want to do, whatever it is, do it. Hedonism. Sin is designed to make people feel guilty, they would say, so that they can be controlled by, quote, a hypocritical religious system. You shouldn't be controlled. And you should be free to do what you want to do and not feel guilty about it because someone else calls it sin. So it's an outright denial of sin. In fact, some would even say the more quote unquote sinful it is, the more you should do it, indulge in it. Hedonism. Are you capable of mistakes? Sure, but we're going to define mistakes on a sliding scale, I should say. But but we all do mess up from time to time, and just kind of learn whatever lesson you think you need to learn. But that's really the goal in life, is have fun and do what you want to do. Maybe try to improve yourself, whatever that means along the way. But that's not a key priority for the person who follows the Church of Satan. It's do what you want to do. There's no need for salvation. There's no need to get somewhere, heaven, or to be saved from our sin and be saved from the wrath of God. Take all of those concepts away, because they were created to make you feel guilty and to control you. There's no life beyond death. This is all you have. Live it up. There are 9 satanic statements, quote unquote, or principles. And you'll see what they believe when I read some of them. I'm not going to read all 9. But it's interesting, because there is this inherent contradiction when people say, same thing with Unitarianism when we looked at it. We're not here to tell you what you should believe, but Unitarians believe the following, or we are committed to the following. So which one is it? Are you committed to something, or are you not committed to something? Church of Satan, do whatever you want to do within the confines of these 9 statements. Otherwise, you're outside of the bounds, even though you may want to do what's outside of the bounds. We're going to tell you what you can and can't do, but do what you want to do. Anyway, 9 satanic statements. Man should indulge, not abstain. That should be your guiding principle. Do it. Then you can think about it, or don't think about it. Some of these are they're repulsive. Be kind only to the deserving. Boy, does this really stand apart from Christianity, where we are told to turn the other cheek and to love our neighbors, to bless those who persecute us. So glad God had mercy on me, because if God was only kind to the deserving, none of us would receive the mercy that is exhibited in Jesus Christ. But the Church of Satan doesn't believe in any of that. So you are to be kind, whatever kind means, only to those that you think deserve it. Take vengeance instead of turning the other cheek. Quote, do unto others as they do unto you. So this is straight up, get them back, whatever it is. Now, Satanists look down on those who want to do good. They call them white lighters. Compound word, white lighters. For the Satanist, they will say that it really is all about combining, as Anton LaVey says, Gnostic, Kabbalistic, which is mystical Judaism, Hermetic, and Masonic elements. So this is right out of the Satanic teachings, right? Anton LaVey's own teachings. Employing vibratory words of power. So this is taking all of the mystical teachings throughout history, the ones that specifically the Christian church, but not just the Christian church, Islam as well, but the Christian church has come down and said, this is especially occultic and heretical. No. Those are the very things that we need to combine, and we need to understand their vocabulary and embrace it, because when we do that, that's where power lies. Some Satanists perform a blasphemous ceremony known as the Black Mass. And the Black Mass is an absolute perversion of all things Christian. If there's one religion it attacks, it's Christianity. And it will take the symbols of Christianity and try to shove it back in our faces in the most blasphemous, perverse ways imaginable. The most important holidays are the Satanist's own birthday, because it's all about you. April 30th, which is the climax of the spring equinox. It is also druidistic in that it's nature-centered. October 31st is kind of the gathering in, the end of another season of the nature cycle, and it becomes a high holy day. Not necessarily because of the history of Halloween or something like that. It has more to do with the revolving of the seasons and the revolving of the moon and those types of things. All right. Related groups, they may not call themselves the Church of Satan, but look out for the Temple of Set, S-E-T. And here there is an interesting connection back to ancient Egypt. One of the gods of the Egyptian pantheon was Set, S-E-T. And Set was most often equated with the evil forces, not tit for tat what Christians would identify as Satan, but it was Egypt's version of, if you will, the devil. They didn't call him the devil, they called him, again, Set. But Set was evil. Set was, in a word, satanic. And the worship of Set has continued to this very day. Now, it will ebb and flow in terms of its popularity, but I just find it interesting that Satanists today lay hold of Set, and they will still worship him, though not necessarily as the god of Egypt or one of the gods of Egypt, but as the personification of evil, and that in which you must indulge to have the proper hedonistic life that you were supposed to have. Formal Satanist organizations have generally been short-lived in terms of traditional Satanism, but the Church of Satan seems to have found a little bit of a niche up in Salem, Massachusetts. In one of the museums, you can sit on a statue of Baphomet, B-A-P-H-O-M-E-T, Baphomet, which is the current statue of the quote-unquote satanic god, or at least the embodiment of hedonism and that which is of the earth, and that which in which you must indulge. There's a statue there, and you're encouraged to have your kids sit on Baphomet's lap and take a picture. So not surprised that it's in Salem. Salem definitely has a touristic side and a darker side. Having gone to seminary right next to Salem, you see this stuff. Baphomet, people are also trying to get Baphomet into various state houses and national places of making laws and pronouncing any kind of judicial verdicts, etc. Courthouses, basically where the 10 Commandments are. There is an organized push to try to get anything affiliated with the Church of Satan or Baphomet into those same buildings. Then you have the actual worship of Satan, the devil himself. I don't want to go into too much detail here because it doesn't take a creative mind to figure out what is involved with the worship of Satan. But suffice it to say that it will quite often include murder, the offering of yourself to satanic being, demonic beings, I should say. It will encourage these things, not nature, but the actual devil now. Perhaps offering your own blood. It is very bloody. It is highly sexual. And the thing that always confuses me, and I get it because scripture says that people are blinded by Satan until their eyes are opened by Jesus Christ. And that was all of us. But what has always really confused me is how someone who worships the devil, so a traditional Satanist, will continue to do so. When within Satanism, there is the belief in the traditional God, the God of the Bible. Now, Satan will lie in Satanism and tell people that he didn't lose the battle, that he's not going to lose in the end, that everything the Bible teaches about him is wrong. So I get that they've been lied to, but I look at it and I think, all right, hold on. The God you're worshiping, quote unquote, is a powerful being. He's a fallen angel, but he's an angel. So I get it. He's stronger than you. But he's a created being. No matter how you spin it, he's a being created by God. I'm going to go and worship the one who created all things versus the created order. So that's how my logic works. If you're a Satanist and you know that God exists, why are you choosing that which by definition is weaker than God? But even as I offer that critique, there's a conviction in my own heart that, Dana, you may not worship Satan, but are you not just as guilty, apart from Christ, of worshiping the created order? Do you not worship the lesser things? So yes, being an actual Satan worshiper confuses me why people would do that, besides just how macabre and disgusting it is. But again, the conviction comes right in, which just lines up with Romans chapter 1, that I too worship lesser things. This is what sin has done to all of us. I do want to touch on a form of it's black magic. It is occultic. It won't call itself Satanism, but it definitely has a role for Satan, and a major role. And it's called Santeria. You'll find this in more Latino circles, though it's not limited just to Latinos, but you will find it in the Latin world. Santeria is a belief that you worship and make covenants with demons. You know these are demons. You offer yourself or your kids or your family to them, pledge your soul to them, and in exchange, certain things will happen on your behalf. You can cast spells against people, and eventually, as you gain the trust of these beings, then you can finally have access to Satan himself and make a pledge to be with him. And there are stories of people who were very much involved in this, and the Lord, by his mercy alone, opened their eyes and pulled them out, even after they were in covenant with Satan himself. So Santeria, if you want to go and research that on your own, is a particular form of Satanism that is popular in more Latino circles today. All right. Ghosts and demons. This is perhaps the area where we have perhaps been the most involved as Christians. Involved in that we perhaps have had encounters with the demonic. It's rare that we're going to have a direct encounter with Satan. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I agree with those who, the just scholars and writers of the past and present, who say, remember, Satan is not omnipotent and he's not omnipresent. That's only God, right? So while he can attack many people at once, he can't attack everybody at once. And so chances are you're not going to have a direct encounter with him, but that doesn't mean that you're not going to have an encounter. You're not going to have an encounter with the demonic, because Satan is just one of many fallen angels that the Bible then calls unclean spirits or demons. So are demons real? Well, the Bible certainly says that they are. What about ghosts? Many people think that they've had encounter with ghosts, personal encounters, even Christians. Well, I'll answer that in just a bit. But if there is a place where we say, that is where I've had a personal encounter, it's going to be in the realm of ghosts and demons. Now, I do want to lead off this particular section with a story also from college. It seems like everything kind of happened to me in college, though there have been a few things after. In college, I had met a guy. His name is Glenn. Glenn came to my dorm one day with a friend of mine from the Christian Fellowship. I knew Glenn to be our college's resident, at least professed Satanist, a hulking man. I mean, this guy was massive. And I knew that as they were coming down the hallway, they were coming to my room. And I happened to be in the hallway as they were coming down, came out of my room, and there they were. And I thought, oh, I know why they're coming, and I know that man. Now, I grew up not a Christian, having seen a number of those very frightening movies like The Exorcist. I have an incredibly active imagination. And so there was a fear that I had of demons growing up. And it's illogical to think, but the way my mind worked as a kid growing up was that there probably isn't a God, but there's definitely a devil. So, and if there is a God, he's not as strong as the devil. So there I can, relate to how people are lied to by Satan. I just didn't get into Satanism. Thankfully, the God that I didn't believe in kept me from being intrigued with Satan and getting involved in Satanism, but I believed he was out there, and I was terrified of him, and I was terrified of demons. When I became a Christian and I was reading the Bible, one of the things that drew me to Jesus was reading the encounters that he had with demon-possessed people, and how there was no fight. There was no question about the outcome of the fight. Jesus was in complete control. The demons instantaneously are begging. They're asking for permission from him. He's in control of this. And it just blew my mind. And I thought, not only is he very kind and loving, the Jesus I'm reading about, but he has control over that which has kept me in fear all these years. And that's not how most people are first attracted to Jesus, but that was the first real hook, if you will, that he used as I was reading the Bible to pull me to him. And then I learned he's the Son of God and he forgives sins, etc. But it was really his power over demons. So here I am, a brand new Christian now, maybe 8 months in the faith, and I'm at college, and this guy's coming to my room, and I thought, all right, now I'm facing my old fears again, but this time as a Christian. He would not look at me. He would just kind of, hands in his pockets, he'd look down like this. And my friend, she looked at me and she said, Dana, this is Glenn. And I was trying to get down and look up into his eyes. And I said, Glenn, I know you. You know my friend Alex. And my friend Alex had witnessed to Glenn, and supposedly Glenn had professed faith in Christ and then said, no, I actually don't want that. I want to go back to Satanism. So I knew that backstory a little bit. And I said, you know my friend Alex? Yeah, I know Alex. I said, well, okay, what can I do for you? And again, he wouldn't look at me at that point. So my friend said, there's something in his room. I knew exactly what she was referring to. My fears are starting to swirl. And I thought, oh no, I don't want to deal with this. So I played coy and I said, well, kind of something. And Glenn looked at me and he said, there's something in my room. I said, well, why don't you both come into my room and let's talk about this. So we go in, we sit down, we talk. And Glenn, again, he's sitting in the corner now. He won't look up. And as I'm trying to pull out, like, what is this? What makes you conclude that there's something in your room? And Glenn finally looked up, and with a shiver in his voice, he said, I have seen the power of the evil one, and you don't want to mess with him. And I believed him. I could tell that he was afraid. Now, I'm much more confident in my faith now. I was just learning to be confident in what I believed. But I remember shooting back with as much confidence as I've ever had. And I looked him right in the eye. And thankfully, I didn't skip a beat. And I said, well, Glenn, let me tell you, I know the power of Jesus Christ, and your evil one, he's no match for Jesus. You have nothing to fear when you flee to Jesus. And I thought, yeah, you go, Lord, that's exactly right. And just saying that comforted me, because it was as if the Lord was saying, Dana, remember, I have control here. So I'm praying, Lord, send my friend Alex over. Alex was Pentecostal, though Alex and I would have some theological differences over that. Alex has more experience. Send him in. And thankfully, my friend Alex comes in. Alex, to make a long story short, we all go up to his room. Alex starts, he tells us when we go in, keep your eyes closed. I had no idea what we'd see. I just trusted Alex. And I was saying, Lord, protect us. So we go in. Alex is shouting and he's speaking in tongues. And it's the first time I'm hearing someone speak in tongues is with Alex. And he is switching between tongues and Spanish because he's Puerto Rican and English. And so I have a mix of languages going on. And then the phone rings. This is way before cell phones. The phone rings and Alex says, Satan, you're a liar. And the phone stopped ringing. However, it was a complete ring. So I thought, all right, somebody hears us because Alex is being a little loud, and this is a prank call. And they just happened to call once. Done. So Alex is going on and praying, and I'm just quietly praying, Lord, protect us. And the phone rings again. Satan, I said you're a liar, he said. And this time mid-ring, it stops ringing the second Alex said that. Now, could have been a prank call again. But there was enough there that I thought, oh, whatever's going on, why am I afraid? Claim the name of Jesus. So in the name of Jesus, if there's anything in here, you are not welcome. Get out of here. Alex then said, it's over. I thought, how does he know this? The lights go on, and I saw pictures on Glenn's wall and said, Glenn, we need to get all of this out of here. Books, satanic books, etc. And I said, let us just get rid of them. And we did. We disposed of them. I knew that I was in way too deep in terms of, I mean, I'm a new Christian myself. I'm not there to mentor this guy and help him grow as a disciple. And especially with this particular topic, I needed some help. And so I turned to the pastor of the church, which thankfully was just right next to the campus. And that pastor graciously started meeting with Glenn and helped him to grow in his faith. Well, I'm spiritually exhausted over the next couple of weeks, and I come in to my room again, and my roommate is there, and my roommate just looks at me almost with a, I'm sorry, man, look in his eyes. And I thought, it's kind of a weird look. And then I look, and there's another guy playing my Nintendo. Now, just to date myself, it was the original Nintendo. And because that was the current, well, maybe there was a new one out, but I couldn't afford it. So I had the original Nintendo. And so he's playing, and I just thought, I don't even know who that guy is, but he has really long hair. So kind of had Thor hair, right? And he stops and he turns and, how you doing? I said, good. My name's Dana. And he looks up at a picture that I had on the wall. I had a picture of Christ, and he turns and said, you a Christian? I said, yeah, I am. I am. And he said, what if I told you I was a Satanist? And I thought, again? I'm going to school at Kutztown University. This is in the Mennonite area of Pennsylvania. I thought, what is going on here? So I said, and I was so exhausted. And I said, I would tell you, you have no idea what you're playing with, and you need to repent and come to Christ now. Okay. And he goes back and plays, That's it. And then there was like radio silence in terms of did I or did I not have an encounter until I was pastoring at a church many years later, not that long ago, and had a 7-year conversation with a parishioner who thought that she was speaking to a dead uncle. I didn't realize the extent to which she was involved in the occult, but she was actually consulting a pendant. And that pendant, she would ask it questions, and depending on how it moved, it would answer yes or no. And as I do, if people tell me that they're, they think that they're involved in demonic encounters, I go through a kind of mental health checklist, if you will. This person was not hearing voices. There was nothing like that. No history of mental illness, nothing like that, right? This is a normal person who's missing an uncle, but had been taught by someone that it was okay to consult a pendant and to talk to what she thought was a ghost. And over the course of the years, it took a while to kind of convince that this is not a ghost, that the Bible talks about Satan masquerading as an angel of light. He is by nature deceptive. He could be pretending to be, or demons could be pretending to be your uncle when it's really a demon. Well, unbeknownst to me, that night, the parishioner went home and consulted the being again. Are you Uncle so-and-so? Yes. The thing spun in a circle for yes, back and forth for no. Yes. And I had asked, are you subconsciously spinning this, do you think? And, we had gone through that, and she was convinced that she wasn't subconsciously spinning it to get the answers that she wanted. So, certainly going to trust her after all those years. So apparently this thing was spinning yes. And she said, well, I just learned that you're not Uncle so-and-so and you are a demon. And it stopped. Tell me the truth. Are you a demon? Yes. Tell the truth in the name of Jesus. Are you a demon? And the thing apparently started to swirl in wide circles, and she got scared and threw it down. Jesus, protect me. Jesus, protect me. At which point she then came and told me that she consulted this. I said, I'm so glad he protected you. You should not have consulted that thing. Can I have it? Because I want to destroy it. And the elders and I ended up destroying this thing. And she, even though she's involved in that, she had a heart for evangelism of all things. And she had a heart for other people who were involved in this. And so she brings out a friend. The friend had asked if I could, now I had just met this person, first time visiting the church. I was giving a sermon on Satan of all things, because we were going through a series on spiritual warfare. This visitor comes to church, the friend of this parishioner. I knew ahead of time that the visitor was coming and wanted to see if I would be open to answering questions at lunch after church. So the parishioner, her friend, and I went to the 99 restaurant, a chain here in the Boston area. And we're at the 99, and it was the day that Tom Brady came back from his exile over the whole Deflategate scandal, and first game back, right? So there's an electricity in the air. We were in the booth that was partitioned right next to the bar area, so we were close to the TVs. And I asked this person, I was sitting directly across, and I said, so what'd you think of the sermon today? It's interesting first sermon to hear upon visitation. And she's, I don't believe in Satan, but I definitely believe in demons. And I said, okay, you're pretty sure based on your response that you believe in demons. Absolutely. I said, can I ask what makes you so assured that there are demons? I believe because I have one in me. And the second she said that, Tom Brady scored a touchdown because the place erupts in cheers. So you hear this, yeah, and I'm looking at her almost with my jaw open because she so matter-of-factly said, I have one in me. And I said, you know, that's not a good thing, right? And she said, I'm realizing that. And I said, because it's revealing itself. I said, well, there is no hocus pocus to get it out of you. Scripture talks about if a demon is cast out in the name of Jesus, if you don't repent, if you don't come to Christ and follow him and leave Satan and the occult and all of this, then the demons can come back sevenfold. And so you need to come to Christ. And she wasn't quite ready to do that. And then we ended up losing touch for a while. Well, stories could go on, including a very wild story from a friend of mine in the Albany, New York area, a pastor friend of mine who had a pretty interesting encounter with the daughter of the area's known top Satanist. The demonic does manifest itself from time to time. At times, it is mental health. And that's the explanation for what people think are demons. But then there is this manifestation of the demonic. So what do we do with stories like The Exorcist or The Exorcism of Emily Rose? I am not one to recommend horror movies, but if there is one movie that I would recommend, if you have the stomach for it, it is in the horror genre. It's The Exorcism of Emily Rose, because it was written and directed by a Christian. He's an evangelical Christian. I heard an interview with him once where he gave us testimony, but then he also says Christians are called to tell the truth and not all truths are pretty. And I feel God has called me to use my artistic ability to tell dark truths because I want people to wrestle with them. And the movie is based on a real case. And it's set up in the form of a court drama. And you realize as you're going on that you're playing the role of jury. And you're trying to determine, is this a case of mental illness? Or was she really possessed? And the story kind of leads you at the end. I think he does take some artistic liberties in terms of the real story. But again, he's a Christian and he's trying to get you to think. So it leads you towards the end, towards one conclusion. But I like it as a discussion starter, if you will, because he gets you asking the question, how do we tell the difference between mental health and the demonic? And is the demonic real after all? Well, in terms of ghosts, when we die, we either go to heaven or to hell immediately, all people. There is no intermediate place like purgatory. We've already covered that. And there's no basis for us coming back to earth or being stuck here as ghosts, as much as we miss the people who've left us. And I miss my parents immensely. And for some, it brings great comfort to know that they're always there watching. Though I find that to be weird, to be honest, because I think if they were always watching, aren't there some things you don't want your parents to see or you don't want people to see? But you know, it is comforting to think they haven't left me. But that is what makes death so painful, is they have. And scripture's clear. When you die, it's either heaven or hell based on whether or not you are wrapped up in the righteousness of Christ, whether you believe in him or not. And so you can't cross back over. What are these things? Because I believe that there are real, quote unquote, ghostly encounters. And I believe that those real encounters are demons masquerading as ghosts, demons masquerading as our uncles and our aunts and our moms and our dads and our friends and figures from history, etc. What of demons? How do they manifest themselves? Well, here I pull from a professor named Vern Poythress, professor of New Testament at Westminster Theological Seminary. And he will give the following, which I have found to be true through friends and mentors who've had much more graphic encounters than I've explained to you that regarding what I've had. Speaking in a voice that they can't possibly make on their own. So having a woman who speaks with a higher voice, for example, somehow reach points of low that the typical female voice just can't reach. And there's no sign that this is a trained, actress who knows how to manipulate her voice, or a trained singer who knows how to manipulate the voice. Something is coming out, or, guys can speak in falsetto, but we can only go so high, especially the older we get. And so if you're speaking in some voice that there's just no explanation, your vocal cords actually can't produce that sound. That's not a telltale sign, but it is something to pay attention to. Clear signs of being bothered when it comes to the name of Christ. And when it comes to the doctrines of the Trinity and salvation being by grace alone, through faith alone, the core essentials of the faith. Along with that is not just being bothered, but fear or anger at the name of Jesus. Inexplicable strength. This isn't the adrenaline rush of a mother whose child is trapped, the wheel of a car has, the jack fell and the wheel has rolled onto her kid who was helping her change her tire, and the mother musters strength to get the car lifted enough so the kid can roll out. There are stories of adrenaline, and adrenaline can do pretty wild things, but this is the strength to throw people around like rag dolls, which happened to my friend as he was working with the daughter of this high Satanist, the daughter who was possessed by many demons. And he's not a small man. And he's just a very physically fit, looks like a linebacker. And he was just kind of tossed around by a frail, small-framed woman. That's not usually how it works. And so signs of inexplicable strength, almost superhuman strength. And then you have a professed non-believer suddenly speaking in what are called tongues or otherworldly languages. These, when added together, or when you see a number of them put together, then the question is, okay, is there something else going on here? So we've traversed a lot of ground during this session, and I thank you for your patience. But I wanted to give you a broad sweep of all things related to the occult, including the darker things such as demons and ghosts. Where most people get upset, Christians, is when you say ghosts are not real. When you point it out in scripture and the logic, they get it. But many of us have had encounters with more than creaking pipes in the house. And we just chalk that up to, this is weird. This is ghost hunting, right? This is what it is. There are ghosts among us. And we don't like to think that perhaps these are demons. But Satan is crafty. He will find many ways to try to get involved in our lives. One way I did not touch on, and I'll just say it, and I'm sure people will, disagree. But those who have been involved with it will tell you that it's not just a Parker Brothers game, and that is the Ouija. Do not play with the Ouija. Ouija has often been a door for possession. It's often been a door for people to go crazy, etc. So the demonic is real. Ghosts are either there's a natural explanation for what's going on, or it's the demonic. The worship of Satan is real. The worship of the human self and indulge is real. Worship of nature to try to find hidden meaning is real. And there's a resurgence in a lot of these things. Santeria is real. So what do? Pray. Here's how we share Christ. We pray. Pray for protection. Ephesians chapter 6, the spiritual armor of God. Pray that people will no longer be blinded by Satan, that their eyes will be opened and they will see that they need Jesus. And then plant the seed and be patient. But there are going to be times when you maybe have to be a bit more direct and tell people, look, I don't need to convince you that there's the supernatural. You've already experienced it. If you haven't hit it already, you're going to. Good angels do not communicate with us. So if you're communicating with a being, you're communicating with a demon. And it may be manifesting as a beneficent being, one that means nothing but good for you. I promise you, it will turn on you. You need Christ. So it's actually a little easier to witness to those who are involved in the occult because you don't need to convince them about the supernatural. They know it. What you need to remind them of very strongly is that what they're playing with is fire, absolute fire, and that Satan is never to be trusted and demons are never to be trusted, and only Christ can get them out of it. All right. Thank you. We will turn to a classic cult next time, the Boston Church of Christ / International Churches of Christ. And then we will continue on from there.